How do you tell a story about Nerf? Well, that's a question that Legitbread set out to answer over 8 years ago, and he's been making spotlights, deep dives, and original challenge videos with Nerf blasters ever since, all topped with a high level of production value that most novices like myself could only dream of. Over the years, we've discovered similarities in the types of ideas that inspire us to make videos. So I asked Legitbread to chat a little bit about his favorite things to work on, how he stays creative, and if he had any quick editing tips for people looking to expand their skills. Enjoy. Legitbread, thank you so much for joining me today. It is a pleasure to finally make your acquaintance on a camera, on audio. We've been messaging for years, but it's finally happened. We're having a conversation.
It is happening. Thank you so much for having me here.
The first thing I gotta ask you about, because I've seen your stuff for a while, I've watched your videos, I even scrolled back a little bit way long ago. I don't know why you call yourself Legitbread. Why do you call yourself Legitbread?
Yeah, the legit bread name is kind of a funny thing that happened all the way back in high school. Basically, me and a couple other friends were doing a cooking class, and this was a time when you would still have those big blocky CRT TVs that sat on the TV stand, and the teacher would say, "It's time to watch a video" or something, and they just roll that big hunky metal thing into the classroom. So then our cooking teacher at the time takes this VHS tape, pops it into the TV, and it's this really old-timey, like probably 90s clip of like this old dude just talking bread, just a whole episode about bread. He's standing there really nicely displayed with all this different type of bread, all these different loaves out, and he would just talk very passionately about bread. And the thing that was like really jarring, but in a funny way, is that every time he liked a certain type of bread, he'd always point to it and say, "Oh, this bread is legit," or "This bread is legitimate." And it just felt like really contrasty because, like a lot of people use legit as slang these days, but it just didn't seem like it fit with the dude. So that just kind of stuck with me and my friend. And during lunchtime, we would just play like CS:GO or like Counter-Strike in the labs rooms. And we would always just have like stupid gamer tag names. So then one day my friend used legit bread as a tag name. And we thought it was pretty funny, so that I would use it sometimes. And then eventually, when it came to starting my Nerf channel, I just said, "Screw it, legit bread." Terrible for marketing because it's not related to Nerf in any way, but I think it's endearing in its own way.
Thank you for explaining. Never would have guessed that. That is hilarious, but it's so relatable. The things that you just pick up through like early schooling that just stick with you for some reason, but I love it. And yes, I will say that sometimes I get a little bit overwhelmed with people trying to incorporate like Nerf or Dart or Blaster into their names. So, you know what? If it's completely unrelated, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, and it also gives me the opportunity to pivot. If I decide I like baking, then there you go. Same
There you
channel.
go. Yeah. I think the first video of yours I ever saw was your Prometheus hopper mod because that was a pretty popular thing when the Prometheus came out and people were like, "Did you know you can stack a hopper on this? You can make it out of like a trash can or a bin lid and just stack." And so I think you made two videos on those and I saw the second one, but I discovered that you've been making videos before that, like for a while, 2016.
Yeah, I think that was a really interesting time too, because the channel started in 2016, and I was just making content as anyone does when you start off and just not getting any traction at all. And you're just kind of hoping that one day you kind of get your break and then you manage to get somewhere. And yeah, I think it was the Nemesis that came out in I think 2017. So it was kind of a lucky break for me because I managed to get the Nemesis really early because for whatever reason, distributors were bringing it to Canada first before they were bringing it
Mm.
to the States. So I kind of got a head up on other people who didn't have that blaster available to them. I forget if I was inspired by other people doing that thing of just stacking crap on top of it to make their own makeshift hoppers, but I saw that and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do my own thing and just make it as stupid looking as possible. So yeah, like went to a local like hardware store, just bought a bunch of bins, put it on. So that's actually pretty fascinating that that was your first exposure to it. Yeah, so those videos did well, and I was really glad about that.
It's just a simple hopper mod, but like I guess if that was someone's like entry point into Nerf where they saw like this crazy hopper for like this new Nerf rifle ball gun. I don't know, so be it. Like it technically works, as goofy as all heck, and maybe you wouldn't like run around with it because it's gonna fall over. But
It might have been like one of the first videos that Drac also saw as well, because I remember he
mm,
commented on one of the videos too. And at the time I hadn't met him, so I was like, oh my God, even he's seeing my stuff. So yeah, very, very degenerate and funny modding that ended up getting exposed to a lot of people within the hobby.
and I should also address you're currently stuck in a toy store. My condolences for you. Hope you get out of there or not. I don't know. If you are enjoying your time, then by all means stay there, look around. Something that I definitely don't see anyone else doing, going to a Toys R Us in Japan, because we ain't got Toys R Us here. What kind of like drives you to Nerf then? Because you said before, like, you made some Nerf videos in the early days too. I saw there's some other things you were experimenting with. So what about Nerf is it that appeals to you?
I think my reasons for staying around in Nerf have really shifted and evolved as I've changed as a person as well. Because in my early days, when I was like super young teenager or young kid, it was really fun to play with these blasters that shoot projectiles. And I think it was just kind of a fun thing when it came to blaster tag or when they had dart tag back in the day. I just thought that was a really fun way to kind of stay active and kind of work on your hand-eye coordination. And I was also really inspired by a lot of like early action movies like The Expendables, for example, where it's just this gun action nonstop.
I'll
So
defend it. Yeah, you don't have to explain it to me. I watch it for what it is.
yeah, exactly. You go in there, you turn off your brain, and you have a good time. And back then, I was really obsessed with like, oh, trying to make my own action movies. Oh, Nerf blasters are pretty fun to play with, and that was kind of a interesting, I guess, bridge between those things. And then I fell in love with the video process and the video making. So kind of fast forward all those years to today, I really like the storytelling aspect and how can I take my video skills and tell different stories or entertain through that method. And feel like Nerf is just a really good springboard because it's niche enough that there's a lot of topics that haven't been covered yet. But it's kind of general enough that even people who haven't played with a Nerf blaster in like 10 years might still be able to enjoy my content. So, like the video side of things really excite me these days.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess that's one of the things that really makes me appreciate your channel too. And I feel like we have this kind of like understanding of trying to tackle these tricky video ideas, right? Like there's so many channels that exist. They'll give you a review of a new blaster, and that's great. Like that is a big part of our hobby, right? Like new stuff comes out. What do you think about it? Are you going to buy it or are you not going to buy it? But there's so much room in between to have like fun ideas, experiment with stuff. You've done a lot of challenges. I've done some stupid stuff as well. I mean, weird stuff, nope, stupid stuff. That storytelling, like you said, is a big, important element to it. And I've loved some of your deep dives into topics where I'm like, wait, Nerf removed this page for something. Oh no, it's like, oh wait, Legitbread made a video about that and has like a time capsule that'll look into it really quickly. That's super awesome. I'm glad that when I see like a new video from you, I don't really know what to expect because it could be like a review on something new, or it could be something completely different. And I think that's fun. I think that's what keeps it special, and I hope that's what people expect when they tune into your channel as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really interesting because, like you said, you can really go into the review section of things, or you could do just scripted Nerf battles or VFX or whatever it may be. And like you said, there's just a lot of playroom where if you stay in the hobby long enough, you start to see different trends. You start to see other companies try to beat each other out. And then there's just a lot of like interesting history that you're not going to learn from like a regular article somewhere out there that we're able to cover. You know, it's like, oh,
Hmm.
remember this blaster that just went extinct, or remember when this patent came out, or whatever it may be. I'm trying to create things that maybe don't exist yet, or maybe content that, what would I enjoy if I were to create it and watch it on YouTube? So it's always a balancing act when you try to create something that you're really passionate about, but then also have that Venn diagram cross over so that other people that are watching your stuff or your audience also are equally as excited as you do. Because there are certain like Nerf series I've done in the past, which, analytics wise, they do really good. but maybe I'm not too passionate about making them these days.
Yeah, I think you're
So,
a little behind on your every 20 something Nerf gun explained in 10 words or less. So are we going to get, like one of those every week until you're caught up, right? Like, because, you've set this precedent. You got to do them every year now, right? So you're going to be doing those, right? You're going to get Coop again, right? You're going to get
mm.
some of these other big names. You probably should reach out to Mark Rober because he does Nerf as well, too. Do you get comments like that pretty
Oh,
often then?
dude, I get berated all the time because I think it was 1 or 2 years ago where I kind of put out this big announcement where I said, like, I'm going to be taking just a break from the every Nerf Blaster explained in 10 words or less series because it just felt very, I guess, robotic in a sense. And it was really hard to get creative when my whole shtick is based on what comes out in that year. So, for example, if there's a year of Nerf Blasters where it's just a bunch of reskins, I'm really limited on what I could put out there. And I think for me, I really pride myself on putting good quality content out there. So that's why I kind of took the break from that. But because it's such a beloved thing and a lot of people actually think about that as being connected with legit bread, and with that to end, right? It's like really, I understand that like it's really tough for people when they don't get more of those every year. So I definitely get berated, but part of me does have to kind of like stand my ground and say, well, if I do like creating videos, if I do want to keep doing this, I want to be in a really good headspace to make the things I like so that other people can also enjoy it to the fullest. These have to come out before the end of the year, so it's like fresh or relevant or whatever it may be. And it would kind of come down to the tight timeline at the end where I realized, oh, yet again, I'm underestimated how much time this takes. And I think it's turned out every single time and it's been fun. And I feel like the work that's been involved has also been gratifying as well because it's kind of something that I could look back on and remember. Like, oh yeah, it was fun when those people sent those clips in.
Yeah, I think that's good to hear because you'd hate to have to like stop doing something just because like, oh my gosh, this didn't work out, this didn't work out. It's great to be like, oh, I'm still really proud of what I've done here, and I just feel like this is a good time to pause, right? It's a good time to kind of like step away, and if I want to step back, then that's great that people will be enthusiastic about it. But yeah, it's always disheartening if you have to like call something quits because you're like, well, that was an absolute disaster, and then people weren't happy with it. It's like, no, no, no. If anything, we're kind of calling it on a high note, and again, just calling it for now. Yeah, let's not make people upset. You never know, right? Keep them
Yeah,
guessing.
never know.
You never really know. So, what then is your inspiration for making videos, right? Like, why do you tackle topic A or topic B, or then scrap those ideas and go with C?
Yeah, so this is the really delicate balance that you know very well as well, where you're trying to take something that, hmm, like no one's covered this topic before, or well, people actually care about this. And you are kind of trying to play fortune teller in a sense because you can be super passionate about videos. Like there's a lot of things I'm passionate outside of Nerf that I would maybe try to integrate in my channel. So for me, I guess a lot of my video ideas come down to like what would be kind of like an interesting title? Like, oh, for example, oh, I traded a penny for the ultimate Nerf blaster, or I tried winning Japan's most expensive Nerf blaster from arcades, or something like that. But do I have the resources needed to make this? Is this like a 1 day shoot? Is this something that I have to film over like 8 months? Do I need a crew with me? Like, how much money if any, do I need to spend on this video? And all those kind of like little variables of how much energy is going to be needed to edit are also involved because man, like there's a lot of ideas I have that I just know I would have to dedicate too much time to create and maybe the outcome won't be as
Hmm.
good, but it's always a balance. I try to think of like beginning, middle, and end, like story wise, like what is something that someone might learn from it, or is there some sort of change that's not expected at the very end? And another thing is like, oh, how can I get people to care about this topic if they haven't been in the Nerf hobby for 5 years? Can I get um someone and their parent to watch a video and equally enjoy it in their own ways? It's a very fluid process. It's not very linear, and it really depends on the video.
How many videos do you maybe not currently, but typically do you have kind of like going on at once? Because for me, if there's like more than three things, if it's like three that have any bit of complexity, I'm like, oh my gosh. And also, I'm not sure if I have the space to store all this stuff because I am an amateur. But like, how much do you typically have going on that's like manageable?
Um, Define manageable.
Ah, there's the trick.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
there it is. Yeah. It's always like in a state of denial. It's like, yeah, surely I can get this done and surely I can take on more projects with no consequences. I guess it's kind of like a good problem to have as a creator because you're always going to have something to talk about. There's always going to be like a new blaster that comes out, or maybe a company sends you an influencer package, or there's always going to be some sort of exciting opportunity that is usually too good to pass up. But that also means that you're also working on the backlog of other two good opportunities that to pass up
Hmm.
from the past. So like I'm just at the tail end of editing some stuff from Japan, which was like a couple of years ago. At least two videos from earlier this year, and then a couple more from Jared's Epic Blaster Battle 9 as well. So
Oh, wow.
it's oh no, I forgot about another one. Oh no. Another one from last year as well. So it's a lot of juggling, and then yeah, just don't be me is what I'm saying. If you're going to be a creator out there, don't be me. Stick to a plan. But sometimes these things just happen because, again, like when it comes to storytelling, sometimes things just happen organically, or you realize like, oh, I should document this, and then it might turn out to be a video afterwards as well.
Sometimes I'll just be like going about my day and it's like, wait, now I'm inspired to work on that thing that I thought about so long ago. But it's always the most frustrating when you do start to get invested in a topic or an idea and then something else just happens and you're like, pivot that. Now, I found something on eBay yesterday. I bought it. It's going to be a video. It's something I haven't thought about for years, but this one thing has re-inspired me to tackle the topic.
Sometimes you just become like hyper obsessed about a certain thing because the
Right.
opportunity just presents itself to you.
And sometimes if you take like a little break from it, or you give it a little bit of time, then you get to the end of like whatever process you have, you're like, okay, I think that's my vision. Yeah, I sure hope that they kind of like my energy came through. Sometimes that's what I find. Like I feel super passionate about something, and then someone's like, you're really monotone. And I'm like, okay, thank you. I'll work on it next time.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes as creators, like I'll think, oh, I hope somebody really comments like, oh, they like the editing or they like this, but then they'll just end up commenting about something that's not even related to the video,
Right.
you know? Like, and I'm sure
Hmm.
that happens to you a lot as well.
What I'll find is if I do have two things competing for attention as I'm trying to finish up one thing, that other thing is just like tapping the back of my shoulder, like, hey, you've got, remember like that idea you're gonna put in for like this video? And you're like, shh, stop. Hey, let me finish this one thing first. It's like, I am the worst about getting like 80% of the way on one thing and then just like task switching to the point where, you know, you've got everything just like far enough, but like you've really got to finish those like last touches. If you keep doing this, nothing will get posted. So like, come on, man.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of things that a lot of people underestimate because on the back end side of things, it's not just the video editing. Sometimes it's like, oh, cool, I finished the edit. Oh, damn it, there's the thumbnail. Yeah, that's kind of a big
Right.
piece. Or like
Yep.
it kind of depends on people's process. Like some people think of the thumbnail first, which is what I think is ideal. But then for me, I sometimes put it on the back burner, which is like the worst thing to do too. So then I'm at the end kind of scrambling to figure out, okay, like what's intriguing or like what would I like to see and whatnot. And then, comes the description and there comes like I guess quote unquote marketing or promoting on your socials about new videos as well. So like there's a lot of stuff outside of the video itself that still has to be done. And that's often like a mental roadblock for me where like you, I maybe get 75% of the way there through the edit. And I think, oh crap, do I need to like get new photos or something for a thumbnail or do I need this last step? And then you're just like, nope, let me go back to this other video that's easier
Yeah.
to edit at this moment.
Like video's done. Finally, I can focus on something else. But yeah, exactly. Once you posting the video, like or uploading the video is not done by any means. There's so much more to add on before you can kind of have kind of like your finished product that people can, you know, actually click on and be not confused. Like I've found adding chapters is really helpful over the years. I think people really do appreciate being able to skip around. Like even in this video, I also find it funny, kind of like in this hobby, because there's so many different people who take a swing at making videos, be it like something different, reviews, whatever they want to be. Some people take a pretty, large scale approach where they're like, all right, yeah, we're going to come in, we're going to do these pictures, we're going to get a bunch of shots, we're going to get, top down, front view, whatever the topic is, might be more involved. And other people, one take, one take. Like it's all going to be right here in front of the camera. I've got everything I want to say right up here, and that's going to be the video. I'm going to post it raw. I don't know how to compare videos like that because I don't want to say that one's bad and one's good. It's just so different, but I assume you, like myself, can't really fathom the idea of just uploading a raw video, being like, "Oh yeah, I'll do it in one take." Like, would that work for any of your ideas?
I think if I did that, I'd lose all my subscribers at once because for me, I just love to ramble. Like it's almost it's a good and a bad thing. I'm doing it right now. Oftentimes I can't stay on the point, and I do envy other people who just press record, talk for 15 minutes, everything sounds great, and they end the video and they can practically post it that way. I do really envy that. But I think one thing that's really tough for me is like sometimes I'll come up with ideas or things that I want to contribute to the video after I've kind of done the A-roll filming. So then I've tried a lot in the past to say like, okay, can I talk for like at least 1 minute straight without screwing up, you know? And then
Hmm.
fast forward 2 hours later, I'm like, bro, I should have just written a script and just said like every sentence like in chunks. So that's usually my go-to method because my brain just doesn't work in a way where I can talk for like 15 minutes straight without screwing up. It also kind of gives me time to formulate my thoughts as well. But it's also a disadvantage in a sense where if you're trying to create something like a Nerf review and you're trying to put it out there as fast as you can because it's a new blaster, well, all of a sudden there's that extra step of trying to formulate your thoughts. You're writing down a
Hmm.
script and you want to say everything in the way that you want to. That's going to be a lot slower compared to someone talking right off the spot. So, like you said, I feel like depending on the context of the video, it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, and they both have their merits in their own way.
Exactly. Some people are just really good. Like I've watched some other folks in this hobby who inspired me be able to just kind of be on camera and recite everything they wanted to recite. And maybe, some things will get cut out, but it was like, no, that was the recording and go. And I'm like, man, yeah, I really wish that I could control my thoughts a little bit better and kind of just have like all that data ready to go too, like in order and not jump from like 1, 2, 12, 11, 3, set. Oh man, oh, no. But like, yeah, I do know a lot of people as well who kind of live or die by a script. And they're like, I've written a script now for every video I've done, and I would never do it any differently. And like yourself, I've seen some of your videos are pretty short for the topics, but that's because you actually have all your information lined up appropriately. So there's no kind of runaway thoughts unless they're on purpose, for like comedy or something. That's totally fine if that's going to be the case. You don't have to just stretch it to like that 8 or 10 minute magical YouTube mark, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because sometimes I would see a topic and then I would say to myself, like, huh, what if I put my own spin on it? But then again, script it and have it more concise. So that specific type of viewer who wants maybe a more short and straight to the point video can enjoy that one as well.
What's been some of your favorite ones to work on? I realize that, there's a bunch of different ways you can go with that, but I have a few that I found over the years that I really enjoyed. So I'm curious what you have to say.
Ironically, and it is kind of a sad thing, and I'm sure you've experienced it as well, where some of your favorite videos, the ones that you're the most passionate about making, are the ones that people don't
Do the
like
worst.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
you're like, oh well, yeah, people don't like this. Some of the ones that I've really enjoyed in the past are bringing my non-Nerf friends into my videos, whether it's like hey, let's do the impossible Nerf quiz, or let's have like a Nerf battle with like silly stakes involved or whatever. Because I feel like it's a really great bonding moment to bring people on camera and do stupid things that we wouldn't do unless it was for YouTube. And then we could laugh at it like 3 years later. Like I have some friends who watch some of my content like years and years down the road because they remember how stupid or how fun it was in the past. Some of the other videos that I really enjoy, they're also the most painful ones to make, are kind of like the documentary type videos that I've made. So one that pops up in my head is my most valuable blaster, parenthesis, not what you think. And
Hmm.
that's when I took a thrift shop blaster. I did some modifications or cosmetic mods to it, and then I brought it to Jared's Epic Blaster Battle to get it signed by a bunch of different other creators. It touched on kind of filming like an art video in a sense, or a montage of a Nerf mod happening. Then there was voiceover involved. There was some A-roll funny moments that happened. So it's very much storytelling, but you have moments that were filmed with A-roll, you had B-roll, you had voiceover. Those are often the toughest videos to make though, because there's just so much you're trying to juggle and keep within a concise timeline, but they also come out like really well produced, and I'm super proud of how that one turned out.
Yeah, you kind of have like the full control on setting the vibe too, right? Like you have kind of like that A-roll material, but you can really make it into whatever you want it to be. You can kind of set the narrative afterwards. Like, yeah, what direction should I take on some of this stuff? And that's what can sometimes be the roadblock of like, wait, does this song fit? Is this not song enough for what I'm trying to get across? But I'm glad you also said earlier the impossible Nerf quiz. I always found that one to be pretty funny. I was glad to see when you I forget when this one was posted exactly, but it was a long time ago, and the fact that you used people who basically had no knowledge was hilarious. That said, it's really hard anyways. I think I got like three of those right, 3 out of 10.
Like spoiler alert, but one of the funniest moments in that video that we talk about to this day is the fact that my friend got 0 out of 10. So it was like he beat the statistical odds of getting a 0 out of 10. So yeah, that was very impressive in its own right.
I also really did like that Arnold Schwarzenegger video. That was probably one of the most unique things I've seen in this space for a while, and that's something that I don't think many people could take a stab at.
Yeah, that one was an interesting mix because I do have like a passion for visual effects as well. And it was one of those things where I'm like, I hope I have the info general enough that people can follow along. But yeah, it was very, very out there. And it's like, again, one of those things where I'm trying to experiment with this hobby and not just create like a 1000, like the 1000th and one review of a certain blaster or something like that. But again, yeah, it comes with its stakes too, because that was a very editing intensive video where I went to a different location and filmed there, and all these props and whatnot. And then it ends up being, one of the lowest performing videos in a long, long time. So it's just one of those things, all part of the game when making content on YouTube.
Yeah, the editing there being the main focus, not the editing of the video, the editing in the video that you were making. Yeah, that was pretty mind-blowing stuff.
I don't really have a quote unquote professional background in a lot of this stuff. I was just that kid on YouTube who saw other people doing cool edits. And then, I would get different programs. Like, I mean, I started editing on like an iPod Touch. It was
Oh,
really
wow.
primitive stuff back then. And then you just kind of watch enough stuff where you start getting money to afford programs and stuff, and you jump to like iMovie or you jump to DaVinci or whatever it may be. But it's just kind of years of watching tutorials, lots of failing, lots of like hitting your head against the desk because you're like, I don't know how to edit this thing, and I'm not like in an editing school, so there's no one I can really ask. And then eventually you just kind of figure things out. And again, like there's still a lot of stuff that I don't know, but it's good enough for the type of stuff I make. And I mean, I could create even crazier quality stuff if I wanted to, but it would just be diminishing returns on like on what I would get out of that. But
That's really cool that you picked up on it initially from YouTube as well. That kind of self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, but it's like you no longer have to like go to some separate school or you have to pay some course to learn it. It's like the information's out there and there's so many people who want to share this information and be like, yeah, okay, maybe some of the editing software costs money or these plugins, whatever. But the ability to look it up, that's free. I've also kind of like struggle with the idea of like, okay, if I try to add more to like each video, then it sets that precedent of like, oh, they saw this in the previous video, so they come to expect this level. Where I'm like, I really don't want people to expect that much of me. I will die by that. Absolutely. Please do not expect that much of me. Like I try to put out what I can. I am just one person and I'm not someone who is like super experienced in that space. I try to relay my knowledge of the subject matter, if anything.
Yeah, that's a really challenging thing too, because let's say you're trying to learn a new editing trick or you're trying to learn a brand new program. For example, I was editing with Adobe products for a really long time. So, for example, Premiere Pro. And then a few years ago, I made the switch to DaVinci Resolve. And that was actually a pretty big step where it was like short-term loss in a sense because I got so much slower because I'm like all of a sudden bringing my whole setup into DaVinci, trying to figure out how the heck to edit, how to set up shortcuts. And it was really difficult. But then it kind of ended up with long-term games where I feel like I'm a faster editor with it and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But it did actually slow down my editing and my posting schedule at that time because I was trying to create content and then trying to learn something new. So it always really is intimidating, especially when you might, when maybe the success of a certain project or the success of your channel is kind of tied to you figuring out this thing. It's binary, 0 or 1, whether you pass or fail on that. There's some videos where I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I put so much effort into that. And I maybe do like 80 or 90% of that now. But I'm trying to be a little bit more loose where I can kind of play with the comedy side of things, or I can play with the amateur side of things where it can look professional, but it can also look a little goofy or a little janky, and then people won't really notice it as well. Because ultimately, it's more about the story and how you convey that as well.
Yeah, and being, a fan of YouTube for so many years, I'm sure you've seen kind of the evolution over time of like very amateur YouTube style videos to then, oh my gosh, these are like super high quality, like professionals are literally posting on here. And when you do have a bit more knowledge in the field and you can start applying it and like making your stuff even better, is it kind of hard to figure out where that line is of like, okay, no, no, this is what I want to post on YouTube because this is YouTube quality. Wait a minute. What is YouTube quality now? What is YouTube quality in the Nerf space?
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to an individual channel thing where certain people will fall in love with certain creators because of the personality, the way they present videos, but maybe the way that's edited or not edited as well. So I think you will eventually find that niche of people who will appreciate the editing for what it is. So I'm just kind of trusting in that process as well because sure, I might be able to bring a 90% video to like a 95%, but is it really worth me spending an extra 5 hours to create a 5 second sequence? Is that really going to bring a lot more people in? You're always going to have that self-doubt of like, is this good enough? Is this going to perform in the way that I want it to? But I think you just kind of have to fight through that and post the damn video. That's what I think, because I've been posting videos for years now, but I still get really nervous every time I post it. Like I try to make content for myself, but I can't always fully remove myself from the fact that I only have the opportunity to do what I do because there are other people who watch it. So I need to make stuff that they enjoy as well.
You said that if you didn't do any editing, you'd lose all your subscribers. And I don't think that's true, but you do post a little less frequently. So I can see where that kind of like buildup comes from, like the nervousness of like, oh my gosh, here comes the video that's going to happen. And I've seen some of comments of people being like, why don't you post as much? And obviously, you take the quality over quantity approach. Some people don't totally understand, or they're like, well, I mean, they don't know between channels, even like in the Nerf space, like how many people work on videos, because for the majority of people, I think it's this many. One person works on one video for one channel. Like, there aren't many teams.
Like I know for you and I, we're our own one-man armies, and that involves being the master of all trades in a sense, or at least good enough at the certain trades where,
Hmm.
you're your own marketer, you're your own boss, Photoshop designer, scripter, editor, voiceover, all that kind of stuff. Like you have to have a hand in all those different things to bring together a channel, to bring together a video. I guess a lot of people don't understand too is that, hey, we have lives outside of YouTube. We have different passions, we have different obligations, we have different relationships we're
No,
a
it's
part of.
just Nerf. That's
Yeah, Nerf or nothing,
obviously it.
bro.
Oh my gosh, there it is.
There was a point in time when, yeah, I was posting a lot, like 5 times more than I am right now. But I was also a lot more anxious, a lot more stressed out because I was putting a lot more pressure and a lot more energy into YouTube in maybe not the healthiest way. And I guess I don't necessarily regret where I am now because I've learned from those mistakes, but you need a balance of everything because it's easy to let that take control and then all of a sudden your mental health goes down or your fitness goes down or your relationships dwindle and that kind of stuff. So it really is a balancing act, especially when, yeah, I mean, even if you're a full-time YouTuber, it's not like all of a sudden you have work-life balance. You don't necessarily work a 9 to 5 as well. It's always going to be that balancing act of what's the most important thing for me right now.
You do YouTube as well because it's fun, and I've always kind of seen that like if it does take on like that kind of like stronger role or like more demanding role that the fun really gets like diminished, not disappear, just a lot smaller, and that's hard to stay as passionate about when this is just kind of like a fun hobby that you do.
Well, I mean, some people might start channels to say like, I'm going to make a boatload of
Money.
money and be super famous. I'm going to be TikTok famous and whatnot.
Oh boy.
Um, because it's very easy to start it off as fun. Then all of a sudden you start to really care about, oh, how many likes am I getting? How many views am I getting? And then like, oh, collaborations come in, oh, sponsorships, oh, I have to keep it up. And all of a sudden you're editing for out of obligation, out of editing, out of fun. So I try
Hmm.
to have like a healthy balance
Yeah.
of that.
And we like making a little bit of money on the side too, because it's nice to have your work not only be validated by people, but validated with money. And also because like, it puts the money back into the channel. You get to keep like buying stuff for the channel, upgrade your equipment. That's super cool. Yeah, no one's pretending like the money isn't a nice side effect, but I think of the channels I can think of like in the Nerf space, you're probably one of those that's like on the higher end, but like still could not make that jump to like full time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's very easy to think like, oh, once you reach 100K or once you reach a certain amount, like, oh, you can go full time. And it's true, like a lot of people do go full time when maybe they reach a certain threshold. It's not like they're making a ton of money. You're probably going to be working crazier hours. You're probably going to be focusing and prioritizing that to build it up even more. And one thing that's really tough too is because let's say you are one of those lucky people who are able to make it full time and really reach that scale. It's really hard to let that go because now you've set up your own expectation, but also the expectation of thousands or maybe millions of other people who are kind of expecting that consistency out of you. So that's where like burnout can be a really bad issue for people, right? Because you think like, well, what if I become irrelevant? What if people stop liking my content all of a sudden?
No, I absolutely agree with that. And that's why, yeah, I think like going forward, I've tried to put emphasis on like taking my time with projects, really kind of like trying to do what I'm passionate about because there's so many things that you can go after and there's always going to be new blasters, right, that you can talk about. So be very methodical about what you choose and exactly what you've been saying before. What's something that people aren't doing that I also just find myself super passionate about and I'm willing to kind of dump these hours into the whole production pipeline, which ends with me just sitting at this computer and
Mhm.
editing like a mindless zombie for quite a bit and hoping that, yes, it comes across that I really did enjoy this topic.
Yeah, it's like a lot of the hours that go into it, you don't see on camera. If it's not the
Right.
most exciting lifestyle of you just sitting at your computer editing and whatnot. But yeah, like sometimes scripting takes like 10 hours. It takes like 15 hours for me. And people are like, what? Like, can't you just make 15 videos in that time? But no, it doesn't work that way.
What? Can't
Um,
you just make like 15 videos in that time?
can't you use AI? Like
Can't
that's
you?
like a question people are
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, duh. That's so
Duh.
obvious. That's a lot of time though, sir. That I did not realize you're putting that much effort into scripting. But you know what? I 100% believe it because when you set yourself up so well at the beginning, it makes the next step so much easier, right?
the foundation is so important because I've screwed myself in so many other situations where I have a loose idea of what I want to do, and then I just have a bunch of random jigsaw pieces, and I'm trying to use this expired glue to put everything together to have some sort of cohesive video idea. So that's why I try to be very careful with how I make things because I try to think of it this way in a morbid way, like, oh, I'm only going to be alive for how many more years? I'm only going to be doing YouTube for how many more years? I don't have it in me to make videos of every single thing that comes up. And I only have so many hours in a single week to put towards YouTube. So what are the videos that I enjoy the most, I think are going to be unique and interesting for people, and are also not too time intensive or just enough of a challenge that I can make it within the time that I have. I don't think I can create a 5 hour effort video and have it be good. So I'm thinking like, okay, this is the only way I know how to edit, so I just kind of have to stick with what I know.
Do you have any quick tips, kind of like your highlights for editing videos? Like if someone was going to really take a stab, like they are just kind of posting their footage raw, or maybe they know how to cut things. What's something that you think is a nice way to kind of spice up your Nerf videos?
Edit it from the perspective of the viewer. How can I have the video have all the information it needs and nothing else? Like a movie that's 2 hours long doesn't necessarily mean it's better than a movie that's an hour and a half long. So I feel like people just kind of leave too much stuff in sometimes. So keep it tight, keep it concise if that's what you're going for, and just only include the information that you feel is necessary to tell the story that you're trying to tell. Good quality video, I feel like, is subconsciously something that people appreciate even though we are getting used to like potato quality Instagram memes or TikTok videos and whatnot, I think there is a level of professionalism that people do resonate with. But again, I mean, there's some YouTubers out there like Moist Critical who's just filming on a crappy webcam, and people love that style too. So I think it's about just eventually finding your style, and it's so hard to actually explain how to do that or what it feels like. But eventually, when you edit and you film consistently enough, you start to realize, oh, maybe I do like putting text over here, or I like color grading my footage to look at like this, or I like the color blue, so it's going to be in a lot of these shots. But yeah, some nice B-roll is something that could work as well.
Yeah, and you find that only with trial and error, right?
Hmm.
It sucks. It sucks to fail publicly. And it sucks especially when you think that you failed and other people say, "Looks good. I love this." And you're like, "I hated that. I thought that
Yeah.
was terrible." And you get like three people saying, "I like what you did there. I thought that was pretty unique." And you're like, "No, no, no. That was awful. I never want to do that again." I think we have a challenge in this hobby sometimes of people being like overly positive. I also don't like it when
Mm.
people are overly negative, right? You know, crazy. And I'm sure people will point to me sometimes and be like, Brett, that's you. Like in this case, it's like, hey, I'm not immune to that criticism either. But I think sometimes when people are looking for genuine feedback, it can be really hard to find it. And so I've actually asked a few people before for actual like feedback on my videos. And like sometimes when you hear the feedback that you didn't want to hear, you're like, eh, oh, well, thank you. Because it's like it's so
Mm.
refreshing after the initial kind of like gut punch where you're like, you jerk, that's what I'm proud of. But then, yeah, exactly the opposite way too, where sometimes you're like, I didn't like that. And someone's like, oh, that was my favorite part of the video. And you're like, what? What?
It's
Just,
always tough. Yeah, it's always tough to hear genuine criticism from someone that you trust or you respect because you're like, damn it, they're coming from a place where they understand. They have skin in the game. You're like, oh, this feels like it hurts more because it's more truthful than some 7-year-old kid who just commented on their mom's Facebook account, you know? When I edit videos or post it or some of my friends or family or people watch it, you rarely get comments on the actual substance of it. It's either like, oh, I watched the video, it was good. I'm like, okay, that's good. Uh,
cool.
Sometimes I wish like I heard a little bit more like, oh, I like this sequence because it was kind of funny how you set that up. But again, it's just one of those things that you can really only talk amongst other video creators out there who are kind of doing the same thing.
I had a conversation with a friend recently, and it'll be really funny if she says that she listened to this as well. But which kind of falls in the category of like someone who is definitely not my target audience. So like if you do have feedback or things you liked, that's great. Like I'd love to hear them. If you're confused by the subject matter, I think that's right. I mean, there's some things that it's okay, like if you're confused by it, and other things where it's like, oh, did I not make that clear at all? Well, that's a problem. But like the idea of like advertising kind of like our stuff beyond the target audience is always tricky too. And you mentioned about like, trying to make videos for people who are, interested, but also like maybe on the fringes and like who would be interested in this topics.
When you're a creator, there's no way you're going to create something that's going to make someone happy and not piss off someone else. You can make things as general as you want, as niche as you want. Someone's always going to be displeased with the way that you are. And that's something that you really have to get used to. And it's still really tough too, because it's ironic. Like a lot of people want to artistically express themselves because that's what brings them the most joy. But it's also one of the most devastating things to hear that when you create something that people don't enjoy, because that's the complete opposite of what your intentions were. So it's always a balancing act. And yeah, that's why it takes like a mental toll on a lot of people too. When you hear feedback you don't want to, or you try your best and it doesn't turn out the way that you want to, it's like you kind of have to build up a thicker skin for it. But then you also have to let in certain comments to improve as well. And I don't know how to fully do that as well. That's something I'm learning about as well, because you're always trying to figure out, is that like genuine criticism? Like, is that something that's actually going to help my video if I change it? Or is that a person just being salty about something?
Do you have any specific blasters or companies that kind of like take your attention these days? Because, yeah, 10 years ago, it's pretty easy to really just focus on, oh, you do Nerf? How's the Nerf, Nerf channel for Nerf blasters? Easy. Nowadays, I mean, we got so much stuff like behind you. I see there's only Nerf stuff back there, so that's pretty easy. But like, are there any specific companies and then beyond that, right? Like Worker or other kind of like more obscure companies that really catch your interest?
I think one of the most exciting things about our hobby space right now is the fact that there is competition. When Nerf was just the one head honcho, they could do whatever the heck they wanted, and that would just be whatever would end up in people's households. So it's really exciting when you have other companies coming out and saying, hey, we're creating something that's maybe like 80% of the quality, but it's also 80% cheaper, or just making those numbers up. But
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like there's a lot more competition and a lot more, I guess, pushing of the envelope of what is available to people at certain price points. So, I mean, a couple of standouts, of course, is X Shot and Dart Zone. Really appreciating some of the stuff that they're creating right now. But honestly, I'm kind of at a point where there's just so many good blasters. There's so many good pro blasters out there. They can only get so much more powerful or have all these new innovative things. So I really like the weird or the wacky side of things like you do. So even though your X-Shot Insanity blasters all completely disintegrated when you tried using them, which was I laughed out loud when I saw that. Yeah, so like some of the wacky stuff where you can put things together, or just kind of the weird collaborations. Like Nerf, if you're listening, do a Splatoon collaboration. I would appreciate that. For example, like Dart Zone has made a Stranger Things collaboration with some like weird and wacky blasters.
Hmm.
I like the X-Shot skins, those collaborations. Even things like the Nerf Minecraft Creeper and Mod 2 pack thing, which doesn't even work that well, but I'm like, it's kind of cool.
So that appeals to you more than like the high power, but you do some modding as well. So it's not to say that you don't appreciate the high power stuff too, but I would assume then you kind of gravitate more towards the fun, the quirky, the silly, the traditional, oh, that's why it's Nerf or Nerf, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, because the pro side of things, I feel like can be its own niche where some people will just stick to pro and competitive and that's all they want. But for me, I just like, if I can like laugh, if I can be silly and still fire like foam projectiles at people, I kind of gravitate more towards that.
You've been to the epic Jared battle once now, right? So
Two
you've
times now.
2 times. So
Yeah.
you've been able to have a Nerf war there, and you've been able to play with some friends too. Have you ever been to kind of like a larger scale? Okay, smaller scale than Jared battle, larger scale than like 3 people.
Yeah, yeah, like I haven't done any HVZs or any like Ragnarok October or other stuff. But I've done the gamut of, small scale, like 3 or 4 people, just shits and
Hmm.
giggles firing at each other with blasters. I've done kind of larger scale, small gatherings of like pro competitive or even some goofy stuff. Like I do appreciate all the aspects, like even the chaos of Jared's epic blaster battle, which is its kind of own fun in its own way. I feel like they all have a little something to offer.
Yeah. Would you be interested in like attending some of those in the future if like, time, location were available, like just to try it out as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And hang out with you guys in Washington? Hell yeah. That'd be fun. I've seen a lot of footage from you guys and it looks super fun, like the setups. There are times like I was just at the mall the other day and it was this really long under construction corridor. And I thought, man, it would be so good to have a Nerf battle here. Like that's where my mind goes a lot of the times.
I hope I can do some more lower powered stuff in the future and bring out some more goofy stuff because I've scaled down my collection quite a bit recently. I don't know how many kind of you have to your name. Let me count the shelf real quick. One, two, three. How many blasters do you currently have like in your own collection?
I don't own any of these yet. We'll see.
Oh,
It's always very fluid because there's a time when I had like dozens and dozens of blasters, but there's just not a lot of space for blasters. They take up a lot of space. They're not like Pokemon cards. So oftentimes I find myself having to donate them or trade them or sell them and whatnot because sure, I would want to keep everything, but I also want my mental sanity of like the space that I live in as well. So that's always I guess a constant good challenge to have, but it also kind of restricts you creatively in good and bad ways because you realize I can't buy every blaster. I can't make videos of all of them because I'm physically limited by my space. So what is worth buying to present on camera?
do you find that stronger pull too of like I need to make videos and sometimes this blaster is the video I want to make or this blaster will supplement the video I want to make versus oh I like that so I'm gonna buy it?
Yeah, like a lot of the enjoyment I get from purchasing blasters or acquiring them is because I get to share my joy or passion of it on camera. I feel like if it's just me enjoying it, it's not as fun. Whereas if you share it with other people, they can also enjoy it in their own way. And because I know like I'll play with the blaster, it'll be super cool, but it'll probably sit around for a while. So why not try to immortalize it in a way to make a video of it? So yeah, like I think it excites me when I realize like, oh, maybe this video topic that I'm covering could benefit from getting this blaster as well. I would feel more inclined to get it in that sense.
And if you do find yourself kind of in that review pipeline where you are trying to get a bunch of new blasters to review, I think that the best reviews, in my opinion, you kind of just have to have as much stuff as possible to compare and contrast so that you can kind of give it that first like impressions in your hands, not just like, oh, I heard it works. It probably works with these magazines too because it's from Nerf. You're like, well, you assume that until it's completely wrong.
Yeah, we're kind of in an interesting space too, where like we're lucky that a lot of the blasters being released, like, yeah, maybe you don't need to stress test it for a month to get a feel of how good it works. Maybe a first impression is good enough, and I think that is beneficial for certain creators who don't have the time to create, those fully fleshed out videos as well. And that's such a good point too, because like it's kind of this rat race of having to have all these blasters, test them out and not just test them out on your own, but maybe even bring them to Nerf battles where the experience might be a little bit different. And all of that is really time consuming. So you got to give like kudos to all the guys out there creating those reviews and putting in the effort because it is a lot more work than a lot of people think too.
It is really hard when you kind of go down that rabbit hole too of like, yeah, what constitutes a best review? And I know I can hear it right now. Oh, sorry, Coop made the best reviews. That's what they tell me. And it's
Yeah.
like if I dare say that, actually Coop could have benefited from taking things to games too to give other opinions. Oops, I just said it out loud. Someone's livid. How dare
Hmm.
you say that this is not the perfect style review? It's like, but there's always room to add more to it. Like I can tell you a few people who bring blasters to like as many games as possible, but some people don't care about that too. So yeah, I feel one of the reasons that I don't tackle those as often too is just because there's almost no way to do it right that at least like I'll feel
Yeah.
satisfied with because if I don't have kind of like a constant stream of like games to test certain blasters and I'll feel like I haven't done my due diligence of something that I really care about kind of like testing, which is like using it in a game. And everyone's games are different too. How do you even compare those?
It's such a good point because you can really just go the full on try to flesh out the blaster as much and use it as much as you can. And yeah, it's really really tough because when I've made reviews in the past, sometimes I would say something that's slightly wrong or maybe I missed information. I'm just like, oh, I always try to be honest or truthful with the information I have at that moment with the blaster.
Highlights, first impressions, right? These are things that they're true in the moment and they're true from the thing that you have, and they just might not be true for everything. And some things just happen in time, like the Mandalorian blaster when it first came out. People were like, "Whoa, it doesn't shoot that hard." It's like, yeah, it's true. And then mine broke its breech after I think 50 shots.
Brutal.
I don't have the blaster anymore, but I have that.
Oh,
And
wow. To remember it by.
this is an important piece of my history now.
It's changed you.
So do you have any particular blasters that are like kind of your white whales? Like, oh man, I really wish I could get this one day, be it like super unobtainium or it's just way too high in price?
I've mentioned it a few times in my videos before, but I always gravitate towards the Whiteout series blasters from 2011. They're not the most rare blasters out there. There's a lot of creators who have them. I just haven't had a chance to find them for either a good price or they're gone by the time I find them. Those would be nice to have one day, but I also know that I'll look at them, say that's cool, and they'll sit around for a little bit. So I think there is something pleasant about it, knowing that it is kind of unobtainium right now, knowing that there's always that chase for it. But there's also no harm in if I never get it too. But who knows, it could end up into a video idea where I try to get a whiteout blaster. I've thought about that in the
There's
past
only
too.
four of them. It's not that hard to collect all of them. It'll just cost you a little bit of money. Yeah.
hmm Which I could,
Have.
try to profit from claw machines and use that money to buy them,
There you go. No, you can't do, you already did that. You can't do it again.
Damn.
I have a whiteout long strike sitting over there, but it's too buried for me to bring it out and try to like show it off to brag. But you know why
hmm
I still have it and I haven't gotten rid of it? Because it's not mine. Because it's on loan
Oh,
from Jose Luchathor. And that's
oh,
how you
it is.
justify keeping something in your collection. It's not yours, so you can't get rid of it. Otherwise, you will basically lose a friend.
Dang, okay, well, I need to go up to Flux then because I think he's got some whiteout. And I say, hey, man, can I borrow that forever?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Indefinite loan. Yeah.
Indefinite. Indefinite is the
Luchathor,
professional way to say
he
it.
has two. Currently one because the other one's here with me. So I'm just
Well,
saying.
he has two. One of them's just currently located at your place.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I am also in search of a whiteout deploy to kind of add to
Mm.
that collection because yeah, I do try to limit the amount of stuff I have to just have. But in that case, whiteout deploy looks cool. So what have you got coming up in the future then? Are you planning anything big in 2025? Any sneak peeks on some videos that you already mentioned some of those earlier then, but any other ones that you're hoping to get to or any events that you're hoping to attend?
Typical legit bread shenanigans of it is Nerf related, but in different ways that you didn't expect. So I'm just hoping that those are also things that people enjoy. I do have some exciting topics that I want to cover that I haven't seen people cover in a while. But all that to say is that I just hope that I can continue creating high quality, hopefully entertaining videos that are things that people haven't seen before in the Nerf space.
And I think the great irony of like sitting down and editing a video for too long is that Nerf is supposed to be about getting up and having fun. So go play or something, even if it's
Yeah,
like raining or snowing outside. It's never been more important. I don't know why Nerf doesn't see that and reach out to more people. I'm like, oh, we just need you to get more people to get out and play.
it's one of those things too where like if you introduce blasters to people, it's so satisfying to see them have a lot more fun than you thought they were going to have as well.
Right? Because we're so used to some of these things, some of these features. You're like, no, but they don't know that. Just
Yeah,
wait.
or operating like a Nerf Maverick or something, and then they're just like, huh, how do I? And I'm like, huh? It's so simple because we're just so exposed to that.
Well, hopefully I can see you at an event in the near future. If not, I'm sure we will find each other on the internet and maybe we'll do another collaboration one days. Who knows?
Yeah, it's been really fun to chat with you, just talk shop, and it's really fun.
Awesome. Thanks for being on.
All right, thanks so much, man.